So one of the students, he highlighted one particular aspect. This, if you could recall, when there was this Mayamirika story, when Ramchandra went out to to get this golden deer, and then Sita Ma was there inside the cottage, and Lakshman was there. So there was this cry, right? So to save Ram, of course that was Maya or illusion. But what happened? Sita is saying, Lakshmana, just go because your brother is in trouble. You have to save him. Then Lakshman is not very sure because he's a what to say? He's the most obedient brother of Lord Ramchandra. So when he's saying, until I get the order of my brother, I'm not going to move. So what I tell you, hey, listen, these gods, if you look at the avatars that they have, some of them, and most of these stories would revolve around the complex human emotions. The example that I just gave, it just one tiny example that you can think of. And Lakshman could not tolerate that. Sitama was like his mother. So when the mother is saying that you have lust for me, which is why you are not going to save his brother, this was extremely excruciating pain for him. So then eventually he left, and what followed after, we all know that. So these different kinds of storytelling would not be there in the original Valmiki Ramayana, if you think of. However, besides this, so what I said, all the characters that have been retold in different versions of Ramayana would give you an idea that how we humans can be gods, and we the gods can also be humans. When you have vices, you become a human. When you have virtues, you become the god. So that's the social message that gets conveyed through these retelling of the epics, right? So with that note, on that note, probably I would try to just quickly move to the data analysis that I did. What I did, I picked up a couple of verses from Nama Ramayana. Those who are not familiar with, there's a wonderful website where M.S. Subbulakshmi, she has narrated, she has sung it beautifully. Nama Ramayana, the entire text or the entire narration is based on the non-verbal constructions. So non-verbal construction is a technical term that I'm using, that means the sentences or the phrases which would not have any verb at all. So I'm going to read out a couple of them. So Nama Ramayana would have one of the verses like Kausalya Sukha Vardhana Ram, right? So when you say Kausalya Sukha Vardhana Ram, that means that's going to be Ram who brought great joy to Kausalya. So the entire, the entire set of verses would be written without a verb. So what is that concept? So when you say Kausalya Sukha Vardhana Ram, so Kausalyankara je Sukha Badhaichati, Kausalyanku je khushi deichati, ame sei Ramanka katha kahuchu. Kausalya huchandi Ramankara ma. So then the mother in Kausalya, she was super, she was kind of blessed to have a child like Ram. The other phrase would be Vishwamitra Priya Dhana Rama. So that means when Vishwamitra is writing Ramayana, so Ram is like one of the most treasured things or one of the most treasured possessions that the sage Vishwamitra would have. Ghora Tataka Ghataka Rama. So when you say Ghora Tataka Ghataka Rama, so that means it's the demon. Basically, it's a demoness who is Ram. So Ram is the slayer of this terrible demoness. The Ghora Tataka Rakshasi is the Diapamanakara Manasika Podikabel. Tataka Rakshasi is Ghora Tataka Ghataka Rama. The fourth one is going to be Mithila Pura Janamohaka Rama. So when you say Mithila Pura Janamohaka Rama, so to Janaka, the king of Mithila. So Mithila, we see that this is a language, and this should be considered as Avadhi, not really Hindi, quote unquote, the current government. And over the period of time, whenever we have had census, the last census has happened in 2011, so there also Avadhi is considered to be a variety of Hindi. Actually, that's not true. Avadhi used to be a full-fledged flourishing language, and all of these Ramcharitmanas or Hanuman Chalisa or anything related to Ram, mostly you would find it written in Avadhi. Okay, so this is one kind of analysis that you can do when you look at text, which would give you a glimpse that languages are dynamic, and this is a language where you can write the entire sentence, you can explain the entire phrase without using any verb. So verbs being mandatory in a language actually should be thought twice. That's not true. It could be English, which doesn't require any, which doesn't, or which mandatorily requires a verb. But here we have a treasure house of languages, our country, India, where we have so many constructions where you do not have a verb. So that's one aspect of doing an analysis of an epic like Ramayana. Now I'm moving to the Odia version of Ramayana, Dandi Ramayana, or we call it Jagamohan Ramayana, as I've said, written by Balaram Das in the 15th century. And this talks about the contemporary Odia life, Odia society, Odia culture, and Odia activities. So what happens when I did the analysis, I realized that the writing style is lucid, come what may. Whether it is Sanskrit, Aravathi, or I don't understand Sanskrit definitely much. Whatever tiny bit of understanding I have about the words, but the way it is sung in by multiple artists, it's lyrical, it's musical, and then it doesn't give pain to your ears. It falls on your ears, it falls on your ears like drizzling rain, and you feel happy when you listen to these gathas or the verses or the lyrics. Okay, so now one side of the story is that we have constructions which do not require a verb. You can go on and on and on talking about Lord Ram without really bringing in the full-fledged sentence. On the other hand, we have Sundarkand, Odia Rame Kaiva Sundara, Balaram Das likhichindu Sundara Kanda. So Sundara Kanda record hochi. So we have constructions where we need verbs which we wouldn't even require in the day-to-day construction. This is an area that I research on. I call it copula constructions. Just to give you a brief overview of this, Otte hochi amar Odiyare copula. So we have two different copulas. One is art, the other one is arch. If I say mu Anindita Otte, that means I am Anindita. So Otte is the copula. Mu IIT Madras re teacher Ochi. So Ochi would be another copula. So art and arch, these are the verb roots. Those who do not know much about linguistic analysis, we have something called root form of the verb. Then the inflection markers are being added. So A marker, E marker, Achanti, Anti marker. So these are the different morphological icons. What I'm trying to tell you here is that there are verbs like otte which we generally don't use when we speak. Do you ever say, if I ask you a question, what's your name? Would you say Mona, Amko otte? No, we don't say that. We simply say Mona Anindita, right? That is how the language has changed. So when you do a linguistic analysis of this epics, you see how the language change happened as far as our first language or our mother tongue is concerned. So here, what I see, otte, which is a copula predicate in Odia, generally it gets dropped. I hope I made it clear when what I mean when I say drop. That means you do not use it in the day-to-day discourse. But if you explore these topics, like if you explore this text, there are enough examples where you would see otte, ottanti, ottu, these kind of constructions are frequently used. One example I'll give, Janakara Duhita otte Kamalini. So when you say Janakara Duhita otte Kamalini, that means we are actually indicating a Masita, and we are saying, who is she? She is Janakankara Chiya, Duhita is Chiya. So Janakankara Duhita otte Kamalini. When we are trying to recite, when we are trying to read it as a poetry, so then obviously you are trying to keep in mind it has to be not only should it be sounding musical or lyrical, it should also have a coordination between the two lines that it has. Okay. So when you say Janakankara Duhita otte Kamalini, you can simply say Kamalini Janakankara Duhita, which would be okay, absolutely. Or you can, even if you bring in the colloquial or the regional varieties, you'll say Kamalini Mane Masita, Janakankara Chiya. That's it. You do not have to bring in any verb at all. But in these constructions, in the epics that I'm discussing, you see otte as a copula is quite productive. The other example I'll give, Ase Noparibe Sina Ehi otte Garu. So this one I got it from when Hanuman is doubtful whether he can actually cross the river or not, whether he can pull that Gandhamardhan Parvat or not. So because Hanuman had a curse that at the very first instance he will forget about how much capability does he have, what all things he can do. So that curse which he had, he's thinking twice, is it possible? Can he really do that? So one of the lines would be, Asi no paribisina ihi otte goru. That means it's so heavy, it's so humongous, it's so huge that I'm doubtful that I can get it back. Then Nila, if you remember, Nila Kahai, Mu Otoi Damta Karu. So that means you are a worthy son of this soil. So if you are doubtful, who else is going to do it? So when you say Ote, Otanti, all of these constructions, we do not see these ones being used in the day-to-day discourse. But if you do an analysis of the text, you see they were very much present in like at least during the 14th and 15th century. Gradually, we are moving towards simplification of the language, and we are trying to stay away from longish constructions like these. Okay. So, what did we understand from here? Besides the literary value, the literary value that these epics would have, and considering we are talking about the social energy that these epics would convey, it not only helps a young girl who was growing up in a tiny village, moving towards a discipline which does linguistic analysis. The epics like these are treasures for me to do an analysis, even if I'm not approaching it from a literary perspective. But if you do the linguistic analysis, you get to know how much of changes that have happened to the language that we are speaking. So language change is inevitable. Change is the unchangeable law of the world, quite cliched kind of a sentence, all of us say that. So much like anything else, language also changes. And as the linguists or as the people who do language analysis, what we are trying to understand, we are trying to see how our own language has changed over the period of time. So how to do that? One of the tools that we can use is the literary text. So when I do the textual analysis of these epics, I realize this is just kind of the tip of an iceberg what I discussed now. You look at the voice constructions, causatives, passive. There have been tremendous number of constructions you can explore if you look at how the language changes. So not only these epics do have literary value, they also have linguistic value. So no matter whether you are engaged or whether you are engaged in this text as a culture critic, as a translator, as a literary literature researcher, or as a linguist, no matter, even if as a layperson, if you just try to understand your identity, your culture, your community, your existence, and how the past has been glorified for you, and what all you can bring in from the past, these texts are going to be helpful, no matter what the discipline that you are in. So to conclude, what we do, if you try to explore different variations or the different variants of Ramayana as a text, or for that matter, I didn't really bring in Mahabharata because of the paucity of time. That would be another interesting area, considering we have so many researchers who are extensively engaged in studying Sarala Mahabharata, which is significantly different from Vyasadevas Mahabharata actually. Those who are exploring it, please remember it's a very different text. Though most of the purvas will remain same, but the storytelling of Sarala is intricately linked to the kind of culture that we live in, to the kind of language that we speak, and the linguistic identity that we have. So, to sum up, all these narratives that we have, if we do a structural analysis, each of them would have a distinct structural pattern. In spite of all the differences, what remains similar? The similarity lies in the simplicity in writing, the lucidity in the language, the free-flowing emotions that it would offer you with. So that's one comparative analysis one can do. And not only do they talk about the intricate connections related to language, culture, and society, they would also speak volume about the complexity and productivity in languages. So the two languages that we just did a brief analysis, one is Awadhi/Hindi, the other one is Odia. We saw in Odia we have full-fledged verbal constructions. Without that, the epics do not seem to be complete. So everything has to be fully packaged. You cannot leave out on anything. Even if Ote kind of constructions are not available in the day-to-day discourse, you find it in the epics. On the other hand, we have Awadhi slash let's say Hindi, where you can talk about names. You can glorify Lord Ramachandra by just using adjectives. Okay, so just by talking about the features or the qualities that he has as a benevolent, Lord Ram is the Lord who is full of compassion. He's duty bound. He's the one who has put his people at the pedestal. everything else has been secondary for him. He has sacrificed his family, his, for the, just to keep the words of his father, he took Banvas. And then he even made sure that his wife has to go through all kinds of tests related to the, to prove the chastity of a woman. These are different things that I don't want to get into. But then Lord Ram has been, we call him Marjada Purusa, right? So considering he's been this epitome of all kinds of compassion and modesty, we have to look at Ramayana as a text in more detail to understand not only how life would have been during those days, what kind of changes has it brought, and also how does it get reflected in the linguistic practices that we have. So my request to all of you would be, irrespective of whatever domain of research that you might have, please look at the whole text, not just to understand, not just to revisit the glory of the past, but also see what kind of changes that have happened in our languages in the recent or in the contemporary days. And since there have been variations in these texts, it is no surprise, it's nothing to be shocked to know that the languages that we speak also have hundreds of variations. And the other thing that I would like to highlight, let's celebrate the variations and let's celebrate the diversity, because eventually it's us, we the humans, we are different. And all the differences that we have can be put together, and the differences can be overcome if you look at the positive aspect of it. So let's celebrate the variations and let's celebrate the diversity. And I stop my discussion over here. My only request to all of you would be revisit the text that you have been familiar with as far as the epics are concerned, and also go back to the childhood memories that you would have heard the stories from this text. And if you want to do a language analysis, please look at the constructions more minutely. And I must tell you that it would give you a treasure of information related to not only language, but also culture, identity, and your cultural landscape. So thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to present my work in this August platform. I'm indeed impressed to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Anindita Sauman. Now, I call upon the paper presenter, Sanghamitra Nath, to present our paper.
Good afternoon to all my teachers, friends, and the students who are present here today. It's my pleasure to say something over here on Ramayana and Mahabharata. I don't think I am a great personality to speak on the great personality like Lord Krishna and Pious Draupadi. Still, I dare to say. And today my topic is Feminism in Mahabharata, the unheard voice of Draupadi. This story provides the view about the character Draupadi from epic Mahabharata with the help of the fictional novel Jagnasati, the story of Draupadi by Pratibha Rai, one of the books that focus on the important character of Mahabharata. The writer has showcased Draupadi as not a woman who live fully the experience spent through life of life. The overall story revolves around Draupadi that shows how her character has been assumed by society according to their understanding, despite she was standing alone for herself, even when the assembly felt helpless, while she was being harassed by trying to take off her clothes. Her husband failed to protect her. She was a princess of Panchal, but then also became the wife of five brothers because of one mere misunderstanding between them and their mother. She is the unsung heroine who suffers to a great extent. She has a miserable life and has been sent to a mysterious exile with her husband also. The status of women and the feminism preschool is presented keeping in mind the atrocities of the only Draupadi, but everyday women are of present scenario. Feminine literature has been with the help of the well-built characteristic of Draupadi. She has been shown as the woman who faces most pain and is the most sacrificing lady. She is highly principled woman who forgives the murderer of her own son only because he is a Brahmin and she does not want his mother to face the same agony. My aim in this story to show the woman who is born out of fire to protect her and her father's respect. Draupadi is not only the essential figure in Indian culture, but literature has not touched upon her deeply. Suffering of women's life relationships that are being held closer to women are the basis of this work. Though no woman in the entire world has been through his affliction and suffering, still she married Mahabharata. Now she has become a significant unit of literature and so increasing fragment of people. Mahabharata is out of two and throne. Mahabharata shows a woman's disrespect as a mere part of culture. It shows lost for land. It has many perceptions, but being a woman, what is most heartbreaking is imagining Draupadi facing the sufferings that are not because of her, but only for her fate. Krishna, being brother of her, could have saved her from her ill-fated fate, but she was all